Did you know that I don't know who invented the sun? Hello, it is I, Jacob.
I know God did.
God did from the
God did
podcast. It is I, Jacob Moore, the self-proclaimed sports analyst, wearing the brand new Toronto Argos swag. I had to wear this in front of Lane.
Wow.
Just
that's part of this year's outfits.
These I should be a model for the Toronto Argos. Like,
oh yeah, dude. Oh, I forgot to put mine on.
But
very nice.
I am joined by, you know what? Since he said I'm very nice, I'm going to introduce him first, Mr. Chazzy 5.97.
Outfit change again with Jazzy.
Then we are joined also by, do you recall, the most dashing podcaster of all, Lane Dashing Dashco. He looks very nice. If you take him on a date, you have to pay for it twice, like Monopoly. And of course, to pay for things twice, you need more for your money. And we got an action-packed show for you, everyone. We're going to talk about the NBA Finals a little bit. We did do a 35-plus minute post-game show, so make sure you watch that show on our Facebook, our Twitch, our YouTube. My gosh, watch it when you're in the shower. I don't care where you watch it, just watch it. They have those things for your phone. Just hang them in the shower, keeps them nice and dry. We're going to talk about the NBA. We're going to talk about the NHL Finals coming up, a must-win game for Edmonton. Can they make a must-needed push? CFL Week 2 is coming up starting tonight, so we're going to get into that. John Tavares and Matthew Knies might be putting pen to paper. We're going to talk about that. The Toronto Blue Jays got their brooms. Dan?
Broom!
Dan loves his brooms. And so...
keep it out of the grill.
More. We're going to talk about so much more. You're going to wish that you were on the island, which, by the way, if you want to join the island, you can sponsor the island by sponsoring Home Depot. You know, we're not sponsored by Home Depot.
Well, hey, we have a lot of money to spend now.
All jokes aside, if you want to join the island, just jump on our sports booth on the Streakers app. That's how you join the fun in the island. But let's talk about NBA Finals. I think I can sum this up in one sentence. Turnovers and bench killed OKC.
Yep.
Am I right? Or am I right?
Pretty much.
Yep.
And fatigue.
Get over it. Fatigue to me is a ridiculous excuse when you haven't played in like 4 days. Like, it's the least amount of travel, like, that's basically possible between OKC, and you're on an airplane. You sleep on the plane.
Huh.
It's not like
they had the extra couple days.
That's what I mean. They had a couple days. They take a private jet that's much nicer than the way, like, I used to commute from Barrie to Burlington. I couldn't just not show up for halfway through my shift. Oh, I'm tired.
They have one private jet for each player. That's a waste of the environment.
No, they're not Taylor Swift.
Oh, okay, good.
But I want Lane's opinion here because I don't think there's anyone more fitted to be this dashing today. Because look at him. And what do you agree with me, or you're saying fatigue? Was it fatigue that was more of an issue? And how is that an issue when you have this much time between games?
Well, I think it's more just how many minutes SGA plays, and we talked about this in the post game. Again, you'll hear the detailed breakdown, but you know the Pacers are playing more of a team game. They're bringing their guys off and on the bench. They're using their bench and utilizing it more, giving their starters less time on the court, and they're able to do more efficiently with their time. Where it feels like OKC's relying a lot on SGA to kind of do everything here, and even though he normally does do that on every given night, I feel like it's kind of taking its toll here where, you know, he's played another 44-minute game here tonight and had an off night and they only lost by 7 points here, but still at the end of the day, a loss is a loss here when they were supposed to sweep the Pacers. At the end of the day, I just think that, you know, he's playing too many minutes and he's too tired. You know, he's playing 40-plus minutes almost consistently, night in, night out throughout the playoffs. So we'll see what happens. But, yeah, it's going to be an interesting way. I think they need to kind of limit his minutes a little bit and use their bench more, utilize their bench a bit more here.
Well, yeah, we were looking at the bench numbers too in the post-game show, and it's just crazy. Like, the Pacers bench dominated compared to OKC. And when you look at all those minuses on the bench from one side and all the pluses from the bench in the other, I'm not Mr. Calculator like Mr. More for your money, but at the end of the day, it's an issue, right? And Chazzy, I wanted your perspective on this. And do you think maybe this is why teams are going to load management for their stars? Because Lane's talking about fatigue from OKC and SGA. Is this where load management comes into play?
No, you had an extra couple days off. There was, I just think the Pacers just looked more hungry. They had the hometown crowd. Game 3, first finals game in a quite a long time in Indiana. So those fans were just absolutely amped for it, and like they came back again in the fourth, right? So it wasn't like they were out of this game or OKC dominated 3 quarters again, but yeah, they just looked.
They didn't really dominate 3 quarters though, because I mean the Pacers outplayed them in the first and the fourth.
No, what I was saying is basically they stayed competitive because again they're quite big underdogs again going into the night, and they can they're led after the first quarter, led at half, down at third, and then just dominated in the fourth. But again, OKC, like you said, looked slow in the fourth. Like, yeah, they just lost their rhythm, their momentum in the fourth because that's we haven't seen that from OKC all year. That's not the way they play.
But is that acceptable in the NBA Finals to get out of rhythm and to be? No, I'm tired.
Yeah, no.
That's not compute. To the hotel room to get ice from the ice machine.
And if you
ice cream in my case.
And if anyone listening on the podcast wants a little bit of a breakdown, we did do a really good breakdown at the beginning of our post game of a play at 5:03. So check that out. You'll kind of see what we mean if you're listening on this on the audio waves. Go watch our post game. We did a really good breakdown of a play that we saw at 5:03 that involved SGA and Tyrese Halliburton. You'll kind of see what we mean about fatigue here. But yeah, it was just kind of crazy on that one play that happened. Just the breakdown of how the speed out. Halliburton was able to turn around, get to that ball, get it to the 3, draw a foul, and SGA was still standing there like, "What day is this today? Did I go get my dry cleaning?"
It's kind of like he was worried if his refrigerator was running or not, if he needed to catch it.
It felt like it. Honestly, it felt like it.
But they will be ready for Game 4. I'd be surprised if they didn't take Game 4.
I would be surprised if.
Mind you, I'm surprised right now that Pacers are up 2-1. So
I know anything can happen if he goes to school.
The Pacers have a decent chance of actually taking this series down in 5. I said it in the post. I'm saying it now. That I still think that they're the hungrier team. They're the hungrier.
Yes,
which in the NHL play, I was thinking if you want more on those NBA finals, make sure you head over to our socials and watch the post-game show.
Lane did a great job breaking down that play he's talking about. That really summed up the whole game, in my opinion.
But when we look at the NHL finals, do we find Florida just wants it more than Edmonton right now? They look hungrier.
Yeah, they do.
Craig, you look disgusted that I just said that, though. I don't know if you start kernel stuck in your teeth. For everyone who's listening the audio side, Craig's got a big bowl of popcorn. Like, it's huge. It is bigger than my ego after the Argos beat the Tiger Cats. Actually, you destroyed us every game last year. But Chazzy, so you don't think Florida wants it more in Edmonton? You think I'm out to lunch?
No, I think both teams want this cup more than anything. But that I don't know, the last 11 minutes. I forget who said it. Draisaitl said it turned into UFC, right? So this is a team that will move on. They've been here before. They know what's on stake. They were here last year. But I'd be surprised that we're not see a different Edmonton team, more discipline. If they get off the rails again, I don't know. Then yeah, we're going to be down 3-1, and I guess you can show me the clown book, but. No, I actually still in this. I think they want it more than anything. So, but however, I am reading some big changes that I guess we can discuss here on what you would do and not do, and some movement on the blue line as well. I hear maybe.
Whoa, really? Wow! I love her. Blue line was the one part that was look pretty solid.
I
agree with Chazzy. I think Edmonton wants it. It's not that. I just think Florida played their game perfect, and Edmonton took for bait. Edmonton bait and failed. I mean, You cannot. Edmonton will never beat Florida at their game. Yeah, Florida maybe keep up with Edmonton with one game, but not in 7-game series. It's just no way. But Edmonton ain't even win one period of Florida's game.
Yeah, but I want to talk more about Edmonton, and I know you guys have thought I'm crazy the way I've been saying I want more out of McDavid and Draisaitl, but I need way more out of McDavid and Draisaitl. At game 3, they were both terrible.
I mean, what do you want, Bo?
I want them to produce and not get scored against. Those are two very simple tasks. That's the top. And I'm seeing everyone blaming Stuart Skinner to the point that he's getting death threats. By the way, can you stop sending him death threats? Like that's just idiotic. Like, I'm just saying it right now. Like, I don't send, if I go to Tim Hortons and they backs and put 3 creams in my coffee instead of 2, I don't send them a death threat. Like, calm the heck down. But
are you going Pickard in game 3 then the analyst? Or game 4, sorry?
Ooh, good question.
I don't know. I think I'm going Skinner again. But if you let in a couple quick ones, I'm putting Pickard in. I think pulling Skinner is the wrong message to the wrong players. Yeah. And I look at game 3, you took 11 minor penalties, giving Florida 3 power play goals. You only scored 1 goal, and it was by Corey Perry, assisted by Bouchard and Ekholm. The only time your power play finally worked was when you went back to 2 defensemen. Draisaitl didn't even register a shot. McDavid didn't register a point. They finally won the face-off battle. Congrats. You won face-offs, and you out-hit Florida. It meant absolutely nothing. Your power play went 1 for 6. 1 for 6! And a team that's supposed to be the greatest power play we have ever seen. And this is why I'm calling out McDavid and Draisaitl. They're the guys. As much as Leaf Nation drives me insane, I'm a part of it. I give them credit that, you know who they call out when it's the problem? They call out the core 4. Do you know who Edmonton calls out? Your $3 million mediocre starting goalie. I'm not saying that Stuart Skinner played spectacular, because he played mediocre. I think mediocre. I think out of the 5 goals, 1 of them he probably should have had. But okay, maybe you should have lost the game 4-1. Who cares? You're paying McDavid and Draisaitl these money to be the greatest players in the league. I called out me, and before you say anything to me, did I not call Mikko Rantanen when he did the same thing? Did I not call out Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner?
Well, that was easy to do.
When he didn't have points in the last 3 games of the series? Yes, I did. So I'm putting, and I've always said this, you can't say it's one way for the Leafs and a different way for everyone else.
That's why Chaz eats his popcorn.
It's the same thing in football. Who do you blame when the Buffalo Bills lose? Unfortunately, the blame goes to Josh Allen, because he is the highest paid player. He is your superstar. He is expected to deliver. When the Kansas City Chiefs lost the Super Bowl, the biggest blame was to Patrick Mahomes, because he's the superstar. He's the best player. He gets paid the most money.
He did suck.
There's a terrible stock market decision. You don't blame the janitor. You blame the stock manager. Go ahead.
Well,
I agree with everything you're saying, but there is one person that I specifically want to call out, and I didn't really notice it until I had watched a lot of the post game. But there's one specific player that I want to call out, and I want to call out Evander Kane. I know you're thinking, why call Evander Kane? He doesn't make the big bucks. I'll tell you why I'm calling out Evander Kane, because I don't know what happened to him that day. Whether he, woke up on the wrong side of the bed, or, he didn't get the proper room service when he ordered his meal. They brought him the wrong breakfast. But there was something about I didn't know that he did this, but during the pre-game warm-up, when they were standing for O Canada, all 5 players were standing on their respective spots, and Evander Kane decided it was time to go take practice laps around the rink. And I don't know if you saw that. He was taking practice laps in his own zone while the anthems were going on. He jumped off the bench and decided to be a little bit of an attitude crybaby and started taking pregame warm-up laps during the national anthem. And then not only that, then he comes into the game and decides to literally feed into exactly what the Florida Panthers were feeding him, which was just take penalties and we're going to score them. And I have said this, for 4 rounds, and I'm going to call it anyone who says the Leafs could have been here. No, they couldn't have, because Florida does something so good that the Leafs will never do, and no team does this. They are so unafraid to take penalties because they know their PK can get the job done. They don't care about taking penalties. They don't care about running over your goalie. They don't care about poking you, going, hey, hello, Wallman, what? Cross check. Oh, thank you. This is what they do. They're so good at it. They don't care. They play with zero fear. They go out there and they pick at you 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 until eventually you have a mental breakdown and you give them a power play and then they bury it. And when you get a power play, you don't score because their PK gets the job done.
Well, sorry, then go ahead.
Sorry, I'm going a bit of a tangent here. I'm just saying.
It's good, though.
But Evander Kane took 3 penalties. He went to the box once. They laughed at him. Then he came out, cross-checked again, went to the box a second time. Then he took another, came out, got a third time. 3 penalties in a row where they're sitting there on the bench laughing at him, being like,
I bet.
And he's sitting there in the back, like, bro, why are you doing this? That's where you lose the game. You're
It's
not
like
going to
shooting yourself in the foot.
Evander Kane deserves this book.
He really does. Because I thought Lane was going to talk about a different interstint, so I'm going to talk about the other interstint I thought he was going to talk about, because he mentioned Lane in his notes, and I did not know about the anthem. I know.
Showed it.
I know there's some controversy right now, but I'm a strong believer that you do not boo or disrespect an anthem, regardless what. That's just my personal beliefs. The play I thought Lane was going to talk about was in the third period. I'm trying to remember what Florida the player was. I think it might have been for Hagee, so I apologize if I'm not correct, but I don't remember at the moment what player was. But Kane hit the player down. That's fine. I love hits. I love physical parts of hockey. However, what he did next was not a part of hockey. Kane hit the guy down, then skated past him, and then Kane slashed the guy with his blade of the stick in his face. And I'm like, what? I'm like, what's going on? Like, I was shocked because it's like, you want to be physical, you want to be a pest. I get that. And luckily he was okay, but that's not a hockey play. And that is not cool. I mean, he could have seriously batted his teeth out.
But Matthew Tkachuk did the exact same thing earlier in that game when an Oiler was down. He kept skating over and yelling at him.
Well, that's just as wrong.
But you know what, though? And that's why I'll be honest. I don't care about that. I personally think if that's the way Florida wants to play, they can't complain when another team does it. The difference is what Lane said. When Florida takes penalties, they kill them off. When Edmonton takes 11 minor penalties, they allow 3 power play goals. When
Edmonton's power play was only 65%?
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. You got to be better.
It's terrible.
And then you look at Edmonton's power play, they only went 1 for 6. And this is where when you guys keep trying to tell me Florida and Edmonton's defense is comparable, it's not. Because you watch the way Florida kills a penalty, and number one, you got Bobrovsky in net, who is arguably the best goalie in the NHL in the playoffs. I think you can easily have that conversation. And you're just getting. I think when you have Bobrovsky in net, you are so confident between Bobrovsky and guys like Ekblad and Jones and Mikkola and Marchand and all these players that you're confident that you're going to kill these penalties off. So I think for Edmonton, they just need to stop taking. I don't mind so much the end of game overzealous. It's over. Let's beat them up.
Yeah,
I mean, first period, you're taking lackluster high sticking penalties, and you're get on a power play, and then you trip the guy in the offensive zone, and it lasts 9 seconds. Did that, and it's not enough. But at the end of the day, when you even talk about Evander Kane, maybe that's where Connor McDavid, as the captain, needs to say to him, bro, what the hell are you doing? Stop.
Yeah.
Right? And this might sound weird when I think everyone thinks I'm crazy that I keep talking Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, but I don't think it's Can you imagine if Austin Matthews didn't register a shot in a playoff game? The whole world would go ballistic.
You
Leon
did,
Dan will be going on about Captain Underpants needs to go get a refill of Diet Coke. And I look at it with Draisaitl, like he has done absolutely nothing this entire series.
I probably have one of those videos in the archives.
I don't know. And yeah, you know what? Maybe he will make me look stupid in game 4 and for Infinity and beyond. And honestly, I hope he does. But right now, I'm going to say this. If you're Edmonton, do you just finally say screw it and put McDavid and Draisaitl back on a line together?
I would at this point, 100%.
You got to do something.
Yeah,
because
I agree with
this last game was embarrassing.
I agree with you, Jacob. Game 3, you can totally call out.
Game 30 happened.
I'm sorry, game 4.
You should be, you little piece of
You can totally call out McDavid and Draisaitl when I lost 6-1. That was game 3, bro. That was not game 4. Game 4 hasn't happened yet. That was game 3.
True.
You can totally call them out for that. But when McDavid had 3 points, you're calling him out. I'm like, okay.
3 points and an even player on the plus minus. It doesn't matter if you create 3 goals if there's 3 goals against you. Then you've just gone even. So. It doesn't matter.
But Skinner's
no, it's not, I guess. It's basic math.
But you had an NHL countable goal. You probably wouldn't have 3 against.
Oh, my. Yeah, that's right. When we're scoring, barely scoring, when Leon Draisaitl.
No, I'm not talking about game 3. I'm talking about game 2 when McDavid had
a single goal in this bloody series. Let's go blame our $3 million goal.
Draisaitl scored the first goal of the series, by the way.
Fine, he has 1 goal this series. 1.
But when McDavid,
how many goals did Austin Matthews have in the second round? And you went on, it was unacceptable.
Well, I agree, it's unacceptable.
How many? How many?
1.
How many
1
goals? So why is it fine when Leon Draisaitl does it? Who, let's be honest, you could argue is a better player than Austin.
Because the series isn't done yet. Maybe he gets a hat trick for next game.
4, it's done. It is more done than the dinner that I'm going to eat tomorrow. It is done.
No, maybe he get a hat trick next game, right? But when McDavid, I agree with you on game 3, you can't blame Stuart Skinner. But on game 2, when McDavid got 3 points, if Skinner didn't allow so many goals and didn't go in overtime,
then how does he blame Skinner?
They scored 4 goals. They kept it in double overtime.
You're an idiot.
You deserve a circus book for that one.
I do not deserve a circus book when you are so Stuart Skinner went save for save of a $10 million goalie. That is like getting mad at a random line cook at McDonald's for only losing by 1 point to Gordon Ramsay in a cook-off.
You never know. It could happen.
And you would be proud of that random line cook at McDonald's who all he does is like it going against a guy like Gordon Ramsay. And you could argue, but Bobrovsky has set the standard for what goaltenders need to do in the playoffs. Would we agree to that statement? He has set the standard for goaltending in the last 3 years. Tell me a better goalie in the last 3 playoff runs than Sergei Bobrovsky.
There's not.
It's like what Vasilevsky did in Tampa. Bobrovsky has set the standard, and say what you want, but Stuart Skinner is actually playing a lot of these games comparable.
Yeah. Hasn't Bobrovsky played like 66 or 67 games in the playoffs?
Yeah,
the last 3 years or something like that.
He must have learned to not walk to the stadium, that there's cars he can take. It's a problem when your highest goal scorer is Corey Perry.
Yeah.
I get he has 9 goals. That's phenomenal. But that's a problem. You can't be relying on
Sam Bennett at 14. That's crazy.
You can't be relying on the 40-year-old to get all the offense.
Yeah.
And that's why I say, you know what? It is time. I think this is now the time you have to put McDavid and Draisaitl back on a line together and hope that Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, who you're paying a lot of money, can drive a line. Mm-hmm. Why can't he drive a line, Lane? He was a first overall draft pick. You're paying him like around what, like $10 million?
I don't think he can't do it. I just think he's hurt.
I was going to say,
not hurt. I agree with Jacob.
Everyone's hurt. You're telling me right now that Brad Marchand isn't injured? He's still putting up an unreal amount of points.
True.
No, not YouTube.
I don't know. I said this before. To be honest, guys, I feel like I've been a broken record this series. I knew this was going to be a problem without Zach Hyman. Mm-hmm. I knew when Zach Hyman wasn't going to play, I said, told you boys, I said, this is going to be a problem.
You did call that.
Yeah, but I'm sorry. One player is not an excuse to not be able to compete.
No, but
One, I would argue one role player because the team is built around McDavid and Draisaitl.
But Zach Hyman has the ability to not be to fight back without being stupid, right?
Well, Zach Hyman's a great player, but you have the two greatest players in the world, apparently.
Ryan Nugent-Hopkins gets paid $6 million.
I don't think that's right.
It's according to Sportsnet.
That's wrong.
That is. I think it's paid like
10,000% incorrect. I will look this up because Sportsnet's not the right.
While Jacob's looking that up, my point is
so sick of Dan's stuff there. He's just
he has the no move clause at $6 million. That's a very good contract.
Can't be $6 million.
Cap hit at 5 point something. 5.12.
Really?
Yeah, it's a very good contract. You can tell that's a player that wants to win. Maybe the Maple Leafs should take a page out of that.
I thought it was closer to 8 or 9 million.
Yeah,
it was in years past, but right now he's 6.
Dan is right. He's 6.25.
Wow.
Because there is a player
now. There's a lot of incentives. Actually, when he also gets $6 million from a minor league salary, that's how they get away with it. So he's basically getting 12, but only 6 on the books.
Oh yeah,
doesn't matter.
What's his cap hit?
6.
Wow.
With a $2 million signing bonus.
Yeah, good, very good contract.
But I still feel Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. There's no reason why him, Evander Kane, and Kasperi Kapanen can't be a second line.
I 100% agree with you.
Draisaitl and Connor Brown on a line because Corey Perry can't keep up with them anyways, and use Corey Perry just strictly for the power play and then for a third grit line. Yeah. Or because McDavid and Draisaitl are going to play a crazy amount of minutes if you go this route, maybe one time it's Connor Brown out there, one time it's Corey Perry out there.
Why don't you put Evander Kane on top line?
Because he'll take too many penalties. And Evander Kane can't play the minutes. And you need someone to play with Ryan Nugent-Hopkins and Kasperi Kapanen.
Yeah.
Is it time to bring Jeff Skinner back in the lineup? He can't score. I don't know who you take out necessarily, but
Pop goals and
no, he's been playing. I think he's been one of their better players.
Yeah.
But Chazzy, you mentioned that there's been some talks about the Edmonton defense making some changes.
Yeah, that was surprising.
Yeah, taking in Klingberg?
Whoa.
I could see that.
And bringing in
Stretcher?
Yeah.
Why?
I could see that.
I don't.
I do. Klingberg's been terrible this series.
He's been good.
He's been 2 packs of
he hasn't.
No, he hasn't. He's been bad.
He's been getting exposed.
I mean, to be honest, though, I would argue out of Edmonton's defense, Wallman's been good in this series, and it probably ends there. Darnell Nurse has looked terrible.
Bouchard's been good.
Like he's still hurt. Evan Bouchard, it goes shift by shift. He's either great or the worst player on the ice.
Oh, he's getting a lot of shots. I think he's gotten 20-something shots.
That's terrific. I would like him to back check and double overtime more than shoot the puck wide.
I'd like him to score a lot more.
How many goals does he have, dude? Like what? Like 1 in this series?
Yeah, no, he's got to score on those.
Yeah, but again, that's not the defenseman's job. How many goals does Florida have from defense in this series? Like seriously, next to none. Are they winning? Yes, because their defense, you know what they're doing? Defending. That's the job. That's like saying Austin Matthews needs to fight more. Like it's idiotic. Like they need to start realizing this is your job. And I would rather see Evan Bouchard maybe score a little less, but back check and double overtime when he does a terrible pinch.
I would like to see
that's what lost the game too. That's what lost the game 2. And game 2 for that was like game 3 between the Leafs and the Panthers. Game 2, if this series goes awry, everyone's going to go back to that double overtime. And then not going to breakaway because
you did that.
To skate.
Yeah.
I said that.
You did.
Bounce back.
It's frustrating to me, but this is exactly why when everyone keeps saying Edmonton's defense is comparable to Florida's, there is no way in hell you would see a Florida Panther not back check and double overtime.
Yeah.
No matter how tired they are.
Yeah, but at least prevent them.
They might take a penalty, but they're going to back check.
Yeah, for sure.
And honestly, I would rather take a penalty. If you look probability, you have a better chance of stopping a shootout than stopping a penalty shot than you do stopping a breakaway.
I don't know. Edmonton's penalty kill is only 65%.
You still have a better chance, and I would rather see the penalty be taken.
Okay.
Or draw the penalty shot because you have a way higher chance of stopping a penalty shot than you do a breakaway in live game. It's
With
just
Skinner in it?
Yes, with Skinner. Skinner is not the reason why you're down 2-1 in this series. He's not the reason why you're leading in this series, because you're not. He hasn't been the solution, but he's not the problem. It's like, Damon, you want to blame Joseph Woll for the Leafs scoring 1-2 goals between game 5 and 7. Right? Like give your head a shake, smell the coffee, like do whatever you need to do, and understand that you can't keep blaming the players you're not paying any money and start blaming the stars. I am sick and tired of everyone going on, oh, if they had this role player instead of this one, or if John Klingberg played a little better. John Klingberg shouldn't even be in the NHL when he's on your second defensive pairing. That's your problem, because you're paying McDavid and Draisaitl so much money. And dude, Evander Kane at $4 million is a total ripoff, because I believe he's around $4 million. So it's like, okay, you're not paying
well. He's just injured all year.
You're paying Evander Kane way too much.
No.
Yes.
No.
I don't know, guys. Maybe I'm just over frustrated.
Yeah, I think so.
No, I don't think he is.
I need more out of the players who I'm paying a ridiculous amount of money.
Evander Kane's got 12 points in 18 games this playoffs. It's
Don't
pretty
care.
Good. He's a $4 million cap hit.
That's a lot of money for a guy that you don't think can be on a second line.
I think he can. I think he'd be on top line.
But
Wasn't Kane a former $8 million player?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay. Okay, so right now then, who would you rather have? Brad Marchand or Evander Kane? They're around the same salary.
Marchand.
Every day of the week. Every day of the week.
I'd rather pay Marchand.
Evander Kane is $5.125 million.
Watch Kane have a career night in game 4.
If he does,
Yeah, exactly.
I will personally send him an apology pie. I need more out of these guys from Edmonton, and stop blaming. Like, I saw someone blaming online, like, oh, Connor Brown needs to step up. Yep, your $1 million third line winger who has probably as many multi-goal games as Draisaitl in these playoffs. Yep, that's who I blame.
Yeah, 30-second shifts, total of 9 to 10 minutes.
Yep, that's the reason why you lost. It's not that Draisaitl didn't register a shot on net. That's not the reason why you lost. You need more. It's not that Evander Kane took 3 minor penalties just being a total idiot. Like, Edmonton's, I don't know if Chris Knobloch needs to make a major shakeup to the lines, which is why I'm thinking, we talked about Fletcher. I'm still thinking Jeff Skinner.
Yeah.
Do you think we see the last time Edmonton did the blender at work? Do you think we see the blender?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so.
Either that or say screw it. Nugent Hopkins, McDavid, Draisaitl.
Wow. Yeah. Why not?
And just
like you think about, it's not just
pray that guys like Evander Kane, Corey Perry, Adam Henry, Connor Brown, Kasperi Kapanen can step up. Because the only thing would be right now, Florida has been able to shut down Edmonton's depth. But can they shut down McDavid, Draisaitl, Nugent Hopkins at the same time on a line? That's an elite line. It hasn't worked since game 1, so you got to try something else.
Well, for sure, because it's not just the fact they lost game 3; it's how they lost it. They lost it playing Florida's game. They lost lopsided 6-1. They lost in Florida. They lost the war. They lost the battle. They lost the fights. Like they look
defeated. They look defeated.
Yeah, exactly. Let's look at game 2. No one hit the panic button in game 2. They lost double overtime.
But, however, Lane pointed out, and I'm starting to agree with him. If you lose this series, everyone's going to go back to game 2. You could have taken complete control,
right?
With winning both games in Edmonton, not even needing a win in Florida,
right?
Yep.
At least right away.
And you know, and what's funny is, Jacob, look how the Leafs lost in game 4, and look how Edmonton lost in game 3.
Almost exact same
blowouts.
Yeah, they couldn't close it, right? That opportunity to close it out, they couldn't get it done.
Am I saying Edmonton's done? Absolutely not. If they win game 4, this entire 25, 27 minutes we've talked about is completely irrelevant.
Yes.
I think they're losing game 4. I'll call
Let's get into our picks on this. Actually, before we get into our picks on the Streakers app, I said I'm starting Stuart Skinner. I want to go around the room. Just quickly. Skinner or Pickard? Dan, I'm going to start with you.
Pickard?
Okay, we got one for Pickard, one for Skinner. Lane?
I'm going Pickard. I don't think Skinner. I know they won't announce it, but I could be me. Maybe I'm just imagining things, but I feel like Skinner really looked bad on his feet there. I think there is a problem with his ankle. His motion side to side didn't look good there. They won't. I know they will never announce it or say anything. I'm calling it out. I think his ankle's broken. I don't think his ankle's 100%. I'm going Calvin Picard. I don't think Skinner's healthy.
Oh, Picard, that's his name. Sorry, not Pickard.
Mr.
Same thing.
Jazzy
Picard?
5.97. Who are you taking? Skinner or Pickard?
Well, as long as Skinner's not hurt, or I'm gonna go back to Skinner and just give him a leash, because this is
Or a leash, but go back.
this is the game you have to win. This game.
And you have to look at it, right? If
I thought
Stuart
Pickard looked pretty
Skinner's
good in fair period.
But Stuart
Picard, or whatever
Skinner's
his
been your
name
horse
is.
that got you here. Like, yeah, Pickard went 6-0, but I don't think you beat Dallas without Stuart Skinner playing the way he did. So
Yeah,
he's
I
your
guess
horse.
so.
The way
Like you don't bench Leon Draisaitl because he had a terrible game 3, right?
Yeah, that's a good point.
I just like the way
personally
Skinner carries himself, the way he post game, and just like he seems like he's in the zone still. I just don't know, unless back to Lane's point, unless he's like really hurt and they're like, okay, but you got to go back to Skinner.
I agree with you. I saw that post game interview with Skinner. I thought he did a very good job. He called himself out. He took responsibility, and I feel bad for him that he's getting a lot of blame because, like what Jacob said, he's a $3 million goalie. He's not NHL quite capable, and he's keeping up with Bobrovsky for a lot of it. You got to give him some type of respect for that. And the fact that he did call himself out, give him a lot of respect for that.
I will say I don't agree with you saying he's not an NHL caliber goalie. I think he's proven that he is.
Yeah, he's back to the Stanley Cup Finals again.
Back-to-back years.
Yeah,
with having some big games, even in this series, he's made some big saves and big moments in this series. I look at game 2, see what you want about him. That game went to double overtime. You don't get to double overtime with bad goaltending.
Well,
right?
That's true. Yeah.
But I want to now get into game 4 and who wins. Now, if you would like to challenge any of us, it's very simple. You download the Streakers app, which I'm assuming you have it at this point. If you don't have it, well, I don't know what you're doing with your life, but you're just too busy watching TikTok videos about dogs getting pedicures. By the way, that is a thing.
Dogs getting what?
Dogs getting pedicures. But let's get into this game now. And who wins game 1? Lane, you already said Florida.
Game one.
Lane, you already said that Florida's winning game 4. So
Yeah,
Mr. Pop traveled through popcorn, Chazzy. Who is taking game 4? Do you think the Oilers can get back in this series?
Let's go Oilers. Yes, absolutely.
Mr. Moore, for your money, who are you taking?
I'm taking the Oilers. I agree with Lane. It did look bad. It does look like a repeat of the Maple Leafs. However, it's a big difference between Maple Leafs and the Oilers. The Oilers have made it to the Stanley Cup Finals, not just this decade, last year. So this is a much better team than the Leafs. I get what Jacob said about McDavid and Draisaitl, but overall it's a better leadership group than the Leafs with those two. And I think this team's getting it done. I said at the very beginning, before the series started, split games in Edmonton, split games in Florida, 2 games apiece, 3-game series going back to Edmonton. So let's see what so far what I said is happening. So let's see what continues.
I hope I'm wrong, but I think Florida is going to win game 4 and take a stranglehold.
Wow.
We are seeing playoff Bob starting to emerge. I think he started to emerge in game 2 when that game went to double overtime, and even game 3. I mean, Edmonton, the chances weren't great, but nothing really got by him except a beautiful goal by Mr. Perry. And Edmonton, I just don't see this team recovering from that game. It was terrible. And honestly, the only guys I saw taking ownership were like Skinner and Ekholm. And we talk about you say they're not the Leafs. It looks a lot like the Leafs to me. Star players not doing enough, not enough talent in the role players, mediocre goaltending with a defense that depends, go shift to shift whether they play or not.
But they made it to the finals. There's this at least
I
team that
don't
could pass the
care. They
second
made it to the
round.
finals without having to face Florida. I think Florida's the best playoff built team in the NHL, and it's not even a conversation.
So I'll ask you two a question then.
No,
If you-
we gotta finish our props.
Oh, okay, never mind.
No. I slap you, silly. Let's get to our props here. Evan Bouchard, will he be a +2? I want to go first and say no way in hell.
Whoa.
He is going to continue to forget that he's a defenseman, try to jump into the rush because he thinks he's Cale Makar when he's not. And he's going to continue to have his salary be worth less. So there's a positive for Edmonton. They won't have to pay him $10 million next year. Now, Mr. Chazzy, I want to give you a prop of someone as a Habs fan you probably don't like. Will Brad
Hudson winning the Rookie of the Year?
Will Brad Marchand continue his dominance and score another goal? Because I got to say, dominance. Been the best player in this series.
Sorry, who's this?
Brad Marchand.
Will he score?
Yes.
Yes. But I also want to tip the cap through the rookie out in Montreal, Lane, on taking home Rookie of the Year. Just wanted to mention that.
Oh.
Good job, Lane.
For him. Yes. Actually, we'll have to do another episode of the NHL Awards or something.
So, Mr.
That's tomorrow, I think, or tonight.
It's tonight.
Yeah, so we'll have to do one on Friday or something.
Mr. Well, we can't Friday, but Mr.
Friday.
Dan.
Yes.
You think Edmonton's going to win?
Yep.
So to win, they need to score.
Yep.
You seem to be perfectly fine with Leon Draisaitl's production. So does he get a goal this game, or does it even matter? But will he score?
Yes, Draisaitl's going to step it up.
And last but certainly not least, the Dashinator, Lane Dashing Dashco. Will the Florida Panthers throw at least 65 hits? Yes, that's a lot of hits, but that's Florida's game.
Yeah, I could honestly see it, to be honest. Or maybe they just troll them and bait them into penalties, and I think that's going to be the biggest thing here. Going back on it, I just think that, like you said, Jacob, unless they can score on that power play here, unless they can capitalize on these. I know people say, what are you going to do, just sit there and get hit the entire game?
Yes.
You can push. Yeah, you kind of have no choice, because if you push back, you're not going to win that game. I've always said this. You don't beat them in the Bentley box. You beat them on the scoreboard, right? At the end of the day,
that's very true, Lane. I think especially for the Edmonton Oilers. But Dan, now you can ask your question.
Okay, I almost forgot what it was, but anyway, since you, Mr. Lane and Mr. J Moore are predicting the Edmonton are going to lose, Edmonton's going to lose in 5 or some crazy thing.
And that's not what I said.
After Edmonton made it to Game 7 in the Stanley Cup Finals last year, hypothetically, if they lose in 5 or 6 in this year, is this year a fail for Edmonton?
Yes.
of course.
They said
I agree.
Stanley Cup win or bust.
Yeah,
And no, how many? It doesn't matter how many games. It doesn't matter if they go to Game 7 losing it in the 8th overtime 1-0. It's a fail.
I agree.
Because this team, they said it from the beginning. You know how from the beginning of the year, we all said Leafs conference finals are bust. And now people are trying to say, oh, well, we took Florida to 7. Yay.
Yeah, but you guys aren't busting it up. You guys are keeping it together, basically.
Edmonton
minus
said
one
in
player.
the Stanley Cup or the years of failure. They said that last year too.
Yeah.
What do you think, Lane? Do you agree with me?
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Like,
And I didn't say, and Dan, I did not say Edmonton was going to lose the series in 5. I said they'd lose Game 4, but I think Edmonton will push it to 6 or 7.
So I put any words in your mouth. Sorry about that.
I said they lose in 5. I'm calling it. I'm calling it.
Wow.
I think that I'm telling you. I said after Game 2, I think the series is over.
Wow.
I think that was a
I'm
deflating
not
loss.
confident as Mr. Dashko in that. I'll be honest. Even my pick for who's going to win that game, I may be 51-49. I'm just going to my gut, and I hope that my gut is wrong. But I want to move on now to the Canadian Football League. And we had a really action-packed week 1. And unfortunately, the Ottawa Red Blacks history is repeating itself, and they're having quarterback injuries yet again.
Yeah.
Drew Brown is out for week 2. It's an undisclosed injury, but let's be honest, it's probably the hip injury where he took a pretty hard sack towards the end of that game against the Riders.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I feel bad for Drew Brown, too. He tied Doug Flutie for most consecutive 400-yard-plus games in CFL history. Like, this kid's special. And for the Red Blacks on top of it, Canadian defensive back Alonzo Adell is out for the entire season with an elbow injury.
Holy God, a whole season?
A whole season. And
Wow.
this is a huge piece to their defensive group. He's one of their real leaders. He's a guy that in a young defensive back group you were really expecting to kind of lead the charge.
And he played the game 1, did he?
He did. And he injured his elbow in that game. We've seen a lot of injuries after week 1 already, unfortunately. Football's a grueling sport, right?
It is, yeah.
But if you're Ottawa, I'll be interested to see who they announce as a starter for this week with no Drew Brown. I'm assuming it will be Matthew Schultz, but don't expect to see Dustin Crum getting his own package because he is one of the more mobile quarterbacks in the CFL, and he doesn't hook slide. He will truck defensive linemen as a quarterback.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I think Crum will get the start.
He won't get the start. They brought in Matthew Schultz to be the number 2 because they wanted some more depth in that position with losing Masoli, and they got it. But don't be surprised to see Dustin Crum getting
Wait a minute, why are we? Oh, yes, Ottawa, not Calgary. Okay, I'm with you now. Yeah.
So, big injuries there. We also saw in Saskatchewan, Rowan Milligan and AJ Ouellette were practicing, but they both have head injuries. They will not be playing this week. Speaking and continuing guys who aren't playing this week, it looks like Chad Kelly will not start on Saturday. He was not taking Team 1 reps. It was Nick Arbuckle taking Team 1 reps. Horn Tucker taking Team 2 reps.
I think this is a mistake. I really do. I feel like you're at home. You're celebrating the Grey Cup banner. You're raising the 19th Grey Cup banner for 2024. You're giving out replica Grey Cup wings. The first 10,000 fans. It will be there. Hopefully we get a wing. We're going to get Ferrari. I think it's a big statement game for Toronto that this is a dynasty. I think you ought to go with your best foot forward in front of the home crowd and put Kelly in there.
No, idiotic. I'll tell you why.
Yeah,
you're just complaining 3 weeks ago. Why did the Leafs play Austin Matthews in the season when he couldn't, so he wouldn't be healthy for the playoffs?
Yeah, that's true. I did.
So why would you play Chad Kelly in week 2 against a Western opponent?
Yeah, that's a good point.
On it. I mean, obviously, a win's a win. You want to go 1-0 every week. That's the goal. And Calgary is a very good team. We'll get into the power rankings later, but I think Calgary might be the most underrated team in the CFL right now. But at the end of the day, if they don't feel Chad Kelly is 100%, that injury he had was crazy.
Yeah.
And Nick Arbuckle was not a terrible quarterback.
No.
So you got to go with that, right?
Yeah, there's good moments last game.
You can't risk losing Chad Kelly for the season because you want him there when you put up a banner. That just doesn't make any sense.
True, yeah.
That's my take on it, at least. But
makes sense.
You guys remember when Kadeem Carey was cut by the Toronto Argos and everyone was shocked, right?
Yeah, I was very upset.
Well, Kadeem Carey was also shocked.
I bet.
And I quote, this was reported to Third Down Nation, it was a surprise and I was heartbroken. But that's how the league goes. This is how business is. I accept it, and that's how I ended up here. I'm pretty excited to start my journey, but it was definitely a shock. He also went on to say they think Saskatchewan could arguably have the best running back room in the league. I mean, if they get Kadeem Carey up to speed and you have AJ Ouellette and Kadeem Carey, yeah, you probably do have the best running back room in
Leak.
No, they don't have Leak. Leak is in Edmonton.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
You should be. You're fired. But I will be honest here, Argo fans still don't seem very happy about the cut from Kadeem Carey after
it shouldn't be.
But
no sense.
They had to because they feel this Williams would have been picked up by someone else. He's young, and they think he's a stud. It's a risk, right?
Yeah.
It's a risk. Hopefully the risk pays off for them, but you don't know.
Is it salary too?
It was also salary cap. You are correct, Mr. Chassis, 5.97. To keep 4 quarterbacks on the roster, which they very well might be doing they might be doing for a while, because even when Chad Kelly's back, you don't necessarily know. He could re-trigger something, and you might need that 4th quarterback to come into the space. So you kind of had to pick and choose, and unfortunately, something had to give. In a salary cap era of the CFL, see where teams can keep all their best players every year. And unfortunately, Kadeem Carey, I'll be honest, I was surprised by the move, but I could also understand it, right? Like, it was a move that kind of made sense in a way. And I don't know if I would have done it, but I can kind of see why they did it, right?
Yeah.
So out of all those newses from the week 1 issues, I will say out of all these teams, I feel the most heartbroken for Ottawa.
Oh yeah, it's
Yeah, it's
terrible
tough.
news.
Like, you losing, and for you guys who don't know the history of the Ottawa Red Blacks, right? They are a team that has lost their starting quarterback basically every year for the last 4 seasons.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And it's just one of those things that, like, every year you think they're going to get on a run. Remember, they were like 7-2 at one point last year. Then Drew Brown got a really bad injury and he was out for a good 5 or 6 weeks.
Like,
They might have had first in the East. They were only 2 points behind the Montreal Alouettes at one point. So
Didn't they only have one loss at home?
You start 0-1. Sorry, say that again, Mr. Chazzy.
Sorry, I didn't mean didn't they only have one loss at home last year?
That is correct.
yeah.
That is very good researcher, Mr. Chazzy. But that one loss was without Drew Brown.
It's like,
You got to wonder if maybe you have home field against Toronto in that Eastern semifinal. Does it go a different way? Right?
Yeah,
Toronto really struggled in the one home game in Ottawa. It was one of the worst games of the season. And time will tell, right? But I really feel bad for the Ottawa Red Blacks. But I want to ask you guys about the CFL power rankings here. And these are from Third Down Nation, because they're kind of your main power rankings when you look at them.
Didn't
So
we talk about this last episode?
We talked about preseason power rankings.
Oh,
These
sorry,
are week 1. You do new power rankings every week, bud. So
okay, cool.
we have Saskatchewan Roughriders at 1,
Okay.
Winnipeg Blue Bombers 2, Montreal Alouettes at 3, BC Lions 4, Calgary Stampeders 5, Red Blacks 6, Argo 7, Elks 8, Ticats 9.
Holy cow.
Right off the bat, I actually flipped Hamilton and Edmonton. I think Hamilton showed more promise than Edmonton. That was a closer game against Calgary than the Elks. I mean, the Elks didn't even have 200 yards in passing. Yeah, Trey Ford's an elite player. But I think with Bo Levi Mitchell at the helm in Edmonton and Hamilton, he threw 300 yards. If you convert on some of those turnovers, there's a very good chance you win that game if you're Hamilton. I am also flipping Calgary and BC just because of that offense in Calgary. And I thought Calgary, in my opinion, had a tougher overall opponent. And I am probably flipping Montreal and Winnipeg. I don't think Winnipeg's the second best team in the league going into their first game without Zach Collaros on the field.
Right.
He was suspended one game for basically just not answering the phone about his drug test. That's basically how he got suspended.
So weird.
I don't know. Are you guys with more my power rankings then, the way I would flip these around, or do you like the Third Down Nation power rankings?
No, I don't like these at all, to be honest. I don't know if I'm crazy here, and Jacob might think I'm crazy because I'm trying to defend Hamilton, but I would even put Calgary like maybe closer to like number 1 or 2. You're like, I think Vernon Adams Jr. like theirs is going to be a really strong team.
Yeah,
Like Chaz, you would agree with me. Like I think Calgary's way better than what they're giving credit.
I do
And
agree.
if you want me to be, if I'm being honest here, I think you could put Tide 7 Argos and Ticats just based off who they played, right? Like you played Montreal, who's a high standard team. I think the Ticats actually played a way better team than what they're giving them ranked. I'd probably even put like maybe even BC like in maybe like third. I think Nathan Rourke showed a lot of promise. I think everyone was questioning how good he was going to be coming into the season, and he came just as expected. Like, I mean, it's only been one game, but he came out.
That's
He came
my
out
argument,
flying.
right? I said Nathan York. I see if he's back on until at least 3 games. I want to see at least 3 games of action, right? Because last year he had one good game too, and then he just fell apart again. So,
And unfortunately, I hate to drop them, but knowing that their Drew Brown is out, you have to drop the Ottawa Red Blacks. Not because they're not good, but now you're playing your backup. You don't know when Drew Brown's back. You have to think about playing a backup quarterback, right? And kind of see when not that a backup can't win games, but it's not as good as having your starting quarterback at the helm.
What?
any
Well, also,
situation.
too, Ottawa's a team that's built around passing the ball downfield, right? They brought in a lot of talented receivers, and they don't seem to like to run the ball much, even though they brought in William Stanback, who is a phenomenal running back. But I don't know. I would still leave Ottawa where it is. I wouldn't bump Toronto ahead of Ottawa because I personally think Ottawa had a better week one than Toronto did. Like I think they faced a really tough opponent in the Calgary Stampeders, and they were able to stay very competitive. But my more biggest surprise, and I want your guys' opinion on this too, is Montreal being rated third. I think Montreal
Yeah,
is
it's
either,
crazy.
I think you could even argue Montreal is the best team in the league after week one. I think you could argue it. Saskatchewan had a big lead and almost blew it. Montreal controlled that entire game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I guess after week one, yeah.
I don't think
Right?
Predators are the best team.
I think you could argue Montreal first, Winnipeg without Zach Collaros. I actually maybe even put them down to maybe even fifth, maybe even below BC.
Yeah, because you don't know. I haven't played yet, right? About Zach Quero.
How
you're
are they
both-
second if they haven't even played yet?
You're not
Well, you
kidding.
have to seed all 9 teams. That's kind of just the way it goes. But you're not going to put Winnipeg at 9th because they had a great preseason. They went to the Grey Cup last year. You're
Yeah,
assuming they're
exactly.
going to be a top, I would say at least in the top 5 this season.
Oh, for sure. I agree.
Right?
With
They're
that.
a great team with a lot of high-end talent. But I mean, I think, I will say this. I think this might sound weird saying it only after week 2, but I think we'll have a clearer picture in some areas after week 2. Because you have the Lions versus the Blue Bombers, right? And these are two Western Conference teams battling head to head. You have the Owls versus the Red Blacks, which originally I thought this would be a really good contested game until I heard about Drew Brown being injured. So now I'm not.
Yeah, it's too bad.
But in theory, you have Calgary ranked as the 5th best team and Toronto ranked as the 7th. That's not a huge gap. So in theory, Toronto, Calgary, in theory, we should see a close game. And I will say Vernon Adams Jr. has not done well against Toronto. The last 2 games in BMO Field, Vernon Adams has thrown 11 interceptions.
Well, that's a good point. About.
And as much as I love VA, big play VA also makes some big play mistakes, right?
He does.
So I'm curious though. And then Hamilton versus the Riders. I'm just gonna say this. Poor Hamilton.
Yeah.
Like they got to go against, I think, arguably the best team in the league. According to the power rankings, you're the best team in the league, and Hamilton's ranked as the worst team in the league. But maybe this is the week we really see how does Hamilton stack up against a team like Saskatchewan. Mind you, there's no Rowan Milligan, so that's tough. No AJ Ouellette. I doubt we'll see Kadeem Carey play this game. He just got there. I think he's going to want to get used to the offense.
Yeah, I would think so.
I want to ask, but then, like, when you guys are looking at these games, what's the game of this week that you guys could really see being like a real tone setter for the week? There's always one game. Like, I mean, I'd argue the CFL, you very seldomly watch a dud, but there's always one game you're on the edge of your seat the entire night. What's the one game?
For me, it's the Argos versus the Stamps. I mean, because you got to see how good VA will be. He did have some shaky games against the Argos in the past, but I can see him stepping it up this game with his new team and everything. And I think with Toronto, they got a lot to prove, being the Grey Cup championship last year. They want to go for it again because if they win a Fleet 8 Cups in 4 years, then you can start arguing a dynasty category, right? So I think the Argos are very hungry for this. I think Calgary's still taking some time to learn their routes and practices of the new teammates. And you look at the former Argo, but they got a former Stamp and
Judge.
Toronto too, a Judge, right? But I don't know. I got a feeling the Argos are going to win it.
So now, Mr. Chazzy, I'm guessing you're excited to see VA again, right? Like, I mean, you want to see him continue to progress. He had a good game in week 1, but still had a couple picks. So is that the game you're excited to see, or is there another one in this week that you could see really being the real ringer?
Oh, no, definitely excited to see that, especially you guys are taking that game in live. But I think it comes back to your point about the quarterback in BC against the home opener against Winnipeg. So I think that should be a big game, and definitely see what kind of lines we're going to have going against Winnipeg after week 2.
Well, and that's an interesting one too, right? It's going to be a more than likely a sold-out crowd. Last time I looked, there were about 300 tickets left going into that one on a Thursday night. That's impressive in Winnipeg.
That is, yeah.
So But it will be interesting to see how the Bombers compete without Collaros, number one, and how does Nathan Rourke do against a better defense? Like,
Right.
Nathan Rourke had a really good game, but let's be honest, Edmonton's defense also just didn't really show up.
No, we didn't.
But Mr. Dashko, when you're looking at these games coming up, what's a game that you really see there is like, ooh, I think this game's going to be a tight one?
Well, I'm not to be too objective here, but I actually do think it's going to be the Ticats versus the Riders because the Riders are a pretty good team, and I think Hamilton has a lot to prove, right? I think, like we talked about, like how kind of it was a disappointing week outing in week one there against the Calgary Stampeders, and you don't want to go down 0-5 again and kind of sink your season. Will be interesting to see if Bo Levi Mitchell finishes the game or if they end up going to Mr. Powell here. So we'll see what happens. But I do think Hamilton and the Riders will be an interesting game. Hamilton at least has their home opener this weekend, so they hopefully will be the little bit more motivated with the fans there in the hometown and getting back here. And with the new adjustments, maybe they'll get a little bit more used to having Kenny Lawler here. So we'll see what happens. But I think that could be an interesting game to keep an eye on.
Very interesting.
I agree with you. I think an interesting thing to see is does Tim White and Bo Levi Mitchell finally start to connect? Because if you could get Mitchell and White to connect, it's a different offense.
Oh, for sure it is.
But I'm curious to see how Davis Alexander does in his second start because everyone's going on that Davis Alexander was phenomenal. And he had a good game, right? He was 19 for 25, 205 yards and a touchdown, no interceptions. Or one interception, sorry. But it was an okay game, but everyone's talking about like he's going to be the next MOP because he beat an Argos team and an Argos defense that was completely different from last year. I am curious to see how he does against this Red Blacks defense because this Red Blacks defense, the first half against Saskatchewan was dreadful, but the second half they looked really good, and that's against Trevor Harris, who I think could win the MOP this season if he stays healthy, and it'll be really interesting to see. Can the Red Blacks adjust and control this game maybe defensively? And also, too, how does William Stanback play? With Drew Brown being injured, you would assume they're going to run the ball a lot more. And, yeah, Montreal did a good job stopping the run against Toronto, against two very young backs. And they got a big lead early, so Toronto had to throw the ball a lot. You're going to go against a Red Blacks team with William Stanback, who is a veteran in this league, who rushes pretty much 1,000 yards consistently every year. So how do you settle up in that one? So that's the game this week. As much as I'm a huge Argo fan, I can't wait to go to the game. Home opener. First 10,000 fans do get a replica Grey Cup ring. New merch is on sale, such as his beautiful hoodies. We're not sponsored by MLSC, but we could be. Well, probably not. But that's not the point. And let's get into, though, the first game of week 2, which is our Streakers Sports Booth CFL game of the episode. And that is the BC Lions versus the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. And I think this is a game that is huge for BC. If you want to try to win the West, you have to beat Winnipeg. And you got to take advantage of no Zach Collaros. So I'm calling it the BC Lions win this game.
Nice.
It's going to be tight. I think Nathan Rourke maybe takes a step back a bit offensively, and maybe you're seeing James Butler kind of running the ball a little bit more. You also got Buck Pierce going back against his former team. He knows how to beat this defense in theory. So I'm taking the BC Lions. Now, Mr. Dashko. Wasn't sure where I was going with this, but I'm going Dashko. Who do you have?
I agree. I think the BC Lions are going to win, right? Like, I think Winnipeg won't win without Zach Collaros. I think Nathan Rourke has something here to prove. He did have a rough season last year, and I know the way we talked about Nathan Rourke a lot on our last episode. I think he has a lot to prove here, especially after calling up the CFL and then having a rough season last year. So I think he has a lot on his shoulder. I think he's going to come to play. I think Winnipeg's going to struggle their first week without Zach Collaros playing their backup against a strong BC Lions team. So I'm going with the BC Lions.
Chazzy, who do you take?
Wow. Going to take the Calgary Stampeders.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they're not playing in this game. You're taking the Calgary. Toronto. Okay.
Oh, we're just taking the BC. I thought you were asking us about our game. I got to take Winnipeg on the home opener.
Winnipeg on the home opener. Mr. More for your money. You have the final say here.
Ooh, tiebreaker. I'm picking the Blue Bombers. I think they got a lot to prove because of losing Zach Claros, and we're pretty upset about questionable controversy suspension to begin with, not picking up a cell phone. So, and they Stresner's a backup.
Strevler, yeah.
Strawberry, like in my opinion, he's an underrated quarterback. He did have an NFL job. He's 6'7", and he can run, and he can throw the ball. And he doesn't have to do much because he got Brady Oliveira as a running back, and he's still got some amazing receivers. So toss him the ball, you're going to be laughing. So I think Blue Bombers are going to win. Like I said, this year is a big year for them hosting the Grey Cup, right? So they got to figure out this dynasty, and I think we're going to win.
So remember, this game will be in the sports booth, so make sure you just jump right in there, and there's CFL in there in this amazing app. But you know what else is in the app? Before I get into the Blue Jays, I'm getting ahead of myself. I want to go into our props for this game, actually, real quick here.
Yeah.
And Lane, I want to start with you. Nathan Rourke, 300 yards, yes or no?
I'm going, yeah. I think he's going to have the.
Wow.
I think with Winnipeg struggling with not having their starting quarterback, I think the BC Lions are going to have the ball a lot more. I think they're going to generate the more offense. I think Nathan Rourke's going to have the ball a lot more in his hands and more time in possession. So I'm going to say Nathan Rourke does get 300 passing yards.
Wow.
My prop for this game, will Brady Oliveira get at least 95 rushing yards? And I say yes to that. Because I think of Brady Oliveira, he is a guy that's going to have to be an absolute tank. So without your starting QB, you're going to have to run the ball a lot. He's the MOP last year, was the MOP of the West the year before. So, yeah, I think Brady Oliveira is going to have a huge game. And he also started off the season kind of slow last year. I don't see him doing that again.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, Mr. Chazzy, will Dalton Schoen, their feature wide receiver, get at least 65 receiving yards? This is without their starting quarterback, mind you.
I'm going to say no.
Ooh.
I'm going to say,
no.
Chazzy, I think you're very smart for saying no on that one. I would have said no, too. My name is No. Call me Megan Trainor. And last, certainly not least, will the BC Lions get at least 4 sacks? That's a tall task against this offensive line.
Yeah, but it's not I'm going to say yeah, but I'll say yeah because I don't think it's that. I think a lot of the games you rely on your quarterback, and I don't think a backup quarterback is going to be as good as Zach Claros. So I'm going to call it. I'm going to say they will get it.
So Lane's saying he will. Dan, what do you think?
Still
processing.
Yeah, I'm
the new
update. Bobby?
You need the update, not Chazzy.
I know, I'm a little slow. What was the question?
BC Lions, 4 sacks. Yes or no?
Oh, yes. I'm going to say no. I mean, I was kind of surprised at BC. They looked a little dicey at times, not just even the quarterback, even for Lions, right? I think there's a lot of movement because of the quarterback and dressing room being divided last year. So they're all kind of getting used to each other. So 4 sacks is a tall order. I'm going to say no.
Well, there you go. But let's move on to the Toronto Blue Jays now. And the Toronto Blue Jays just got another big sweep, right?
Boom!
Playing a high level of baseball, scored 20 runs in the last 3 games, and only 4 games behind the Yankees, and they moved in the second in the AL East. So my question for you boys, do you finally believe in the Blue Jays? I am now 70% believing, 30% skeptical.
Same. I believe in the Jays. I believe in the. I believe in the Blue Jays. Yeah, I think they're doing a great job. You know, they've been really key. I think that athletic sweep really helped them out. And then they did such a good job against the Phillies, taking 2 or 3. I think that was super impressive. And then coming in to the Cardinals, who is a team that's been, you know, they've been up and down. They have been respectable this year. They've beaten some pretty good teams, and the Jays were able to come into their home barn and sweep them here. Now, it'll be interesting to see if they can repeat the success in Philly again, as Philly, I feel like, will be coming for major revenge here. But we'll see. I mean, the pitchers are probable. They got 2 of their best pitchers in Godwin and Barrios coming up in the season. Bowden Francis, I get scared from that. He's been really struggling, but he's been known to almost throw some perfect games. I think the Jays could take 2 or 3 again if they play their cards right.
Wow. So, yeah, I mean it's possible, but I don't think they're going to sweep the Phillies again, though.
Not
Like,
sweep. I think 2. I think they got
I mean,
2 probables.
But I want to now to kind of to either Chazzy or Dan, but with the Yankees, they're playing the Royals and the Red Sox in their next 2 series coming up. So let's be honest, they'll probably win both of those series.
Yeah,
Do not argue the Jays have to win these series to keep pace.
100%. I know winning against Philly's a tall order, but like what Lane said, they did it before, and they're on a really hot streak right now. I think they can do it again, and if they can get second in their division, that I believe that'll be a playoff spot for them, right? And that's really good. So they'll have to keep doing it. So yeah.
What do you think, Chazzy? You kind of think too, the same as Dan, like they just got to keep pace right now at least.
Yeah, if you can just take 2 of 3 in these series and continue to win series, then you run that formula, and then when you play the Yankees and play Boston, like, just got to make sure you win those series or sweep those.
Well, that's the
series.
thing. If you can continue to either at least go 500 or better against non-divisional opponents and then beat the divisional opponents, you should make the playoffs.
You can't lose ground playing against them. Like, that's where we lose it all the time. Yeah.
And that's I'm just waiting, and I hope it doesn't happen, but it seems to be the last couple of years the Jays goes on these runs and then they just go on a big losing streak in 1 month where they'll win like 4 in a month. And it basically kills the season. As long as that doesn't happen, they have a legitimate shot to really stay alive in this playoff hunt, right?
We usually fall apart right around trade deadline, do they?
Usually just before, funny enough.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know why. Because when is trade deadline? July?
I'm not sure when the MLB trade deadline is off the top of my head. It is a day.
I'll look it up.
I think it's early.
Blaine Computing Co. is going to check.
I think it's around halfway through versus hockey's like 3/4, but I could be wrong.
But I don't know. I just think if you're the Jays, I think the Phillies, I agree, you have to win that series. And then they face the Arizona Diamondbacks after the Phillies. Got to win that series. Yeah. Then you face the Red Sox back at home. You have
July
to win.
31st.
Oh, it's right. Okay, July 31st.
Like, I'm trying to remember now. I don't think the Jays play the Yankees anytime soon. So I think they just got to try to keep pace until they play the Yankees.
Yes.
And then if you can win that series, instead of looking up Toronto Blue Jays, I just looked up Jason Tatum. Nice looking guy, actually. But he is a NBA player, Mr. Morfor.
Why do you look him up?
Because it was a mistake. So you got the Diamondbacks, the White Sox, the Guardians, the Red Sox, and then you start against the Yankees on Canada Day weekend. So if you can realistically, right, and let's just actually kind of look further ahead here, you should be able to win all those series. Would you guys not agree?
Diamondbacks are dicey. They're up and down. It depends. Sometimes they're good. They're another team that's like, they get hot and they get cold.
Yeah.
they did just beat the Dodgers, so you never know.
But if it's a hot and cold team, in theory, you should at least should be able to beat them. I'm not saying I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but they're a beatable team. I don't see a team coming up that you're just like, oh, there's no way in hell they're winning that series.
No.
Like, I mean, the White Sox you should cream.
Oh yeah.
Guardians, I don't think they're, to my knowledge, I don't think they're a high.
They're struggling this year. They're struggling this year.
They're struggling. Red Sox are struggling.
Yeah.
So even if hypothetically you lose the series to the Diamondbacks, if you can win the series against the Phillies, White Sox, Guardians, and Red Sox, you're putting yourself in a good position to come in against the Yankees. If you win that series against the Yankees, you're starting to put yourself in a position where you can actually maybe take first in this division. I'm not saying it's an easy task, but I think it's doable.
Crazy, eh?
But I want to move on to the Toronto Maple Leafs here, and I know this is Chazzy's favorite part of the show. That's why I'm putting him full screen.
Just you ate your popcorn already. Think the Maple Leaf.
I should have saved some for this segment. My goodness.
But
what are we talking about now? Who are you guys signing?
Knies and Tavares. Apparently, these deals are coming soon, according to The Athletic, which is that we could see these extensions announced by early as next week. Now, Matthew Knies, from what I've heard, is 7 to 8. That's the rumors. Again, that's not confirmed. That's just what I've heard. Lane, you were talking something with Tavares, and you're saying a long deal term is what could be in the works?
Yeah, there's been some rumblings. I'm not sure if nothing has been confirmed. So take this with the finest pinch of salt, whatever salt you like, whether it's Himalayan salt, normal salt. Take that finest salt. But some people are saying that this could be an 8-year, like $3 to $4 million deal with a lot of deferred money, so a lot of it backloaded to give Tavares, a longer contract so that he can get paid for the next 8 years at a like $3 or $3.54 million range. But again, that's a lot of internet rumors, so take that with a pinch of salt. I wouldn't be surprised if that doesn't happen, but that is a rumor that's out there.
Chazzy hates that rumor so much he left. But I look at that, and I think that's very possible for the Toronto Maple Leafs because that's, you know what? You'll just say Tavares is injured the last couple years of his deal. You'll put him on IR, kind of like Joffrey Lupul back in the day in Toronto, and that's how you'll make it work cap-wise. However, I still don't know if I like John Tavares coming back to the Toronto Maple Leafs.
I understand that.
We keep going on about the DNA of this group, right? And that's all everyone talks about. And Chazzy, I see you are already shaking your head. I don't know if it's with
no, I'm agreeing with you. I'm paying attention. I'm hearing.
Because I look at it, and maybe this is the time that Toronto, even if it's a deal that financially makes sense, is not the deal you make. Craig, you're actually agreeing with me.
I'm definitely agreeing with you. Well, you just said I don't know. We've heard it all since we put a shovel in the sand here on the island. That it was conference finals or bust, and I'm not seeing too much of a bust. I'm just seeing a lot of we could have, we should have. Look at Florida, but let's change our DNA. You guys are so far from a Florida Panthers DNA that I don't know. Are you making enough changes to change that DNA that you want to? And again, was Mitch Marner your biggest problem? Like, this guy's going to be like one of the biggest free agents in the summer, and you're basically saying he was your problem.
Well, you got to remember, though, I think that's the change they're making with Mitch Marner, and they're hoping that's a big enough change. I think the big problem in Toronto was leadership, and John Tavares was your former captain. He's your assistant captain now. And I wonder if it's harder for Austin Matthews to become the captain with John Tavares still on the team. So I personally think it is time to move on from John Tavares, even though he is willing to come here for a very reasonable price at around that $4 to $5 million. That's very reasonable if Sam Bennett's going to get 10, which I still think is insane. But if you're paying Sam Bennett 10, Tavares at 5 is a steal in theory, right? But Lane, you mentioned here that we almost didn't have Marner back in 2019.
That is true. So Nick, this is coming. Yeah, this just came out recently in the hockey news from Nick Barden. So just want to give him a shout out. So he writes in his article, before signing a 6-year, $65.4 million contract with the Toronto Maple Leafs in 2019, there was reportedly a chance that then restricted free agent Mitch Marner would offering an offer sheet to the Columbus Blue Jackets. According to the Athletics' Aaron Portalazzini, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that right, Mitch Marner's agent, Darren Fairness, and former Blue Jacket GM Jarmo Kekalainen at least discussed inking the now 28-year-old forward to an offer sheet before Toronto signed him just after training camp got away.
Huh.
Well, there you go.
So my question is then, is Columbus in the Marner hunt now? They had a pretty good year. They exceeded expectations. You need to replace some talent. Are you in the Marner hunt now?
I think so, yeah.
Maybe.
Dan's saying no.
Why not? They're a pretty good team. Like this is a team that just missed the playoffs by like a point. Like they came just so close. I think if they would have won one extra game, they would have made the playoffs.
Down to you, right? Like one extra game in the shootout or something like that. But I don't know. I just don't see them landing someone like Mitch Marner. I mean, I think he's got a limited list of where he's going, and I think that's about it. I don't think we're really going to know until July 1st happens. My question is to someone like Mitch Marner, though, are we going to see him sign Miami Bucks on July 1st? Or are we going to see him where sometimes this big superstars in the past take a week and watch the
July 1st.
July 1st.
Yeah, I think so too.
I'm hoping so, because by the way, we will do some sort of free agent frenzy show. You don't need to just be locked into TSN because, Streakers Island podcast has you covered like a blanket on a chilly Tuesday night. So make sure you lock
blanket.
Dan loves blankets, by the way.
I do.
He
I love
complains that the
blankets.
house is too cold, but he likes to wear short sleeve t-shirts everywhere. But this was an interesting one I was reading off the hockey news, and they were talking about 3 role players the Toronto Maple Leafs could be getting. They're also the same group that says they should buy out Yarncroke, Kempf, and Reeves. Now, I'm okay at buying out Ryan Reeves or just dumping him in the minors, but they're talking Eric Robertson, who had a long stint with Columbus, had a pretty good year in Carolina this year, 14 goals, 18 assists. Like he actually had a pretty good season.
Mm-hmm.
Then they're talking about Nick Bukestad, who had an off year, in my opinion, with only 19 points.
He's a good player.
He's a good player, but he had an off year. He did have 40 points. He's hit 40 points 3 times in his career, and he had 45 the year before in Seattle. The last player they talked about was Brandon Tanev. Brandon Tanev is the one, if you can get him for, I would say, half of the salary he's making now, you can't pay him 3.5. But if you can get him for 1.5, 2 million, I would like him in Toronto. However, I don't know if these 3 are better than Yarncroke and Kempf. That's kind of my issue, right? And we keep talking about changing DNA, and it's kind of like my rant in Edmonton when I'm like, we're blaming Stuart Skinner when McDavid didn't have a point and Draisaitl didn't have a shot on net. Now we're blaming Yarncroke and Kempf for not Matthews and Marner and Nylander and Tavares not producing enough.
Oh my goodness.
I don't know. It's just, I don't see how this fixes your problem. If anything, they keep talking about changing DNA. This is the same thing we've been doing for 9 years, just swapping role players in and out.
Yeah, literally.
I agree. Like it's getting ridiculous. You can't just keep blaming the 3rd and 4th lines every year and being like, well, eventually it's got to come down to the stars and them not producing in the playoffs. And I totally agree with you what you're saying, Jacob. I mean, I understand the centers are not the best, but especially now that Brock Nelson's off the market, Duchesne looks like he's staying. So maybe the Leafs are panicking, just thinking like, well, we need a center. And now it's being reported that now, I don't know, again, this is rumors. It's being reported that the Florida Panthers are willing to just let Ekblad walk and try to bring back Marchand and Bennett. So they may not even make it to free agency. So now the Leafs are probably looking, going, well, where are we going to get our center? We kind of don't have a choice to bring back Tavares and maybe try to convince Taves to come here on some $2 million deal here, which I still hope that happens.
That'll be really cool.
Apparently the Leafs are on his top 2. So if he comes for 1.5 to 2 million, Lane's going to be a very happy boy. But
very cool.
You could bring in, maybe the Leafs are panicking a bit, just seeing the names falling off the board and being like, well, Duchesne's not there. Nelson's not there. These guys aren't there. We kind of have to bring back somebody. We don't want to bring back Marner at 13, and at least you can say Tavares is willing to at least come back at a discounted price where, if you can get 80 points on a $3 million deal, it's pretty good, even as a third-line center. So maybe it's more of a panic just to bring him back to, like, we need somebody to play on this team so they don't completely, like, miss out on the playoffs completely.
Yeah, but it's interesting here, and we talked about it before. Why aren't they just looking at the trade market? Like, I've been doing some research on the Buffalo Sabres lately. Yes, you can. You can do whatever the hell you want. You're Toronto Maple Leafs.
You can, but
I don't get looking at, like, I'm with Jacob. I don't think the 4th line was the problem here. I mean, I think David Camp is a very underrated player. Mm-hmm. You got him a good, long, extensive contract. It costs a lot to buy him out considering he just signed to a 4-year contract. And Yarncroke, yeah, he didn't play great, but he missed the whole season, right? So, to replace with Boosback and Tanev and Robertson makes no sense to me. It literally makes no sense. I think you're downgrading at that point, to be honest with you. I mean, David Kemp hardly played all playoffs, and when he did play in playoffs, he played very well. Maybe you should have played him a couple more games.
Well, and I just look at it too. I think there's no need to panic because there's always players at trade deadline you can acquire. Winning the division clearly doesn't matter. And so why are we panicking now in June? June.
And let's be
We're
honest,
talking
we're
about it
losing-
right in June.
Well, because this is what Leaf Nation does. They want to talk about it.
Let's be honest, we're losing Mitch Marner, right? We all kind of know that. We're probably losing Nick Robertson. So with those two forwards
Easton
gone,
Cowan.
now you got better space to put Kelly Youngquo and David Kemp besides the fourth line.
And I think it's maybe then too. They're all worried about third line center. Let's see what Scott Lawton can do with a full training camp before I go and get a third line center.
100%.
Yeah.
I think Scott Lawton looked better and better after every game he played as a Leaf, right? So,
Or do you call a team like Buffalo? Because I do want to move on to the Buffalo Sabres. And you guys are probably thinking, why the heck are we talking about Buffalo Sabres? So what I want to start doing is breaking down a different team every episode. And I want to talk Buffalo Sabres because you guys think I'm a little nuts, but I would argue they're a worse but a similar situation to the Toronto Maple Leafs. They are a team with high-end talent that
definitely
never gets.
worse.
They are worse. Don't get me wrong.
Definitely way worse.
Years about making it to the playoffs. However, they have won more. They still have made it more. They have won more rounds in the stretch than the Toronto Maple Leafs had in the same stretch.
Mhm.
So figure that one out for you in like a 17-year stretch or whatever. But you're looking at key players going to be gone, like Alexander Tutt, who's going to be a UFA next year at 36 goals. Bowen Byram and JJ Peterka.
There's someone I could see the Leafs targeting.
Oh, 100%. But then you also got guys like Bowen Byram and JJ Peterka who are about to become RFAs, and it doesn't look like they want to stay in Buffalo. So that's what I'm saying when they're saying there's no free agents available. Well, why don't you call the Buffalo Sabres on a guy like Tutt? Or I keep saying it. Let's go get Tage Thompson.
Okay, Jacob Fair. Okay, no, but tell me for what though? What are you trading?
Easton
Mitch
Cowan.
Marner.
Mitch, well, you can't trade Mitch Marner.
I can trade Easton Cowan. You
that
sold the whole farm. Why not sell the last horse?
There's another point why we shouldn't get those idiots who listed, sorry people, but those idiots who listed on that list. You need to watch the spot for Easton Cowan. I called it. I said he has to win the Memorial Cup to be a Maple Leaf in my book, and he did it. You gotta give the kid a chance now.
No, you don't. I'm quite okay playing Easton Cowan for the Marlies for a year.
I don't know if that'd be enough, but you probably have to throw in more.
I
don't know if they would.
Easton Cowan and I don't know. Move.
You have no first round picks left.
Move a guy like Brandon Carlo to go get out Brandon Carlo and Easton Cowan in a draft pick to go get a guy like Alexander, to go get a guy like Tage Thompson. Then you use that money and then you sign Aaron Ekblad and have Aaron Ekblad and Morgan Riley as your top pair instead.
I think it's a big mistake giving up a Brandon Carlo so early. He did win the Stanley.
Okay, but you're telling me Brandon Carlo was better than Aaron Ekblad. He's going to be available.
No, but I'm saying Brandon Carlo is only $4 million. Aaron Ekblad's going to be at least 7 or 8.
Probably 10.
Yeah, and I think I'm giving up a Brandon Carlo way too early. He did win a cup at Boston, and many other years in Boston, he was a huge piece of a successful team. Okay, did he do a lot this playoffs? No. Was he the reason the Leafs lost? No. Did he play solid minutes beside Morgan Riley? Yes. Did Morgan Riley look better beside him? Yes. So give him a full year, another chance. You still have him under contract for $4 million.
I'm just saying, though, I think the Leafs might have to make a splash. And you look at some of these guys. Brandon Carlo is a guy that you could go. And Lane, I see you in our private chat. Wow.
I just wanted to
Logan Thompson has a modified no move clause of a 5-team list. I could see Logan Thompson wanting to go play with Austin Matthews. They're both from Arizona. Seriously.
You mean Tage Thompson?
They have a top line of Matthews, Knies, and Thompson from Arizona. Why the bleep would you do that? What has Captain Underpants done for us from Arizona? Absolutely nothing. What has Matthew Knives done? Arguably nothing. Yeah, he had one good season. Whoop-de-doo. What has Tage Thompson done in Buffalo? Nothing.
Last time he scores 40 goals.
Crazy idea. Yeah, I don't care how many goals they get in a season.
Pretty good player, man.
I don't know. I just don't see. I knew that was coming, but I think you try and kick me out. You wouldn't kick yourself out instead.
Austin Matthews and Matthew Knies could arguably almost score 200 goals as a line.
Okay, and what are we getting in playoffs? Maybe 3? How much playoff experience does Tage Thompson have?
He scored the game-winning goal in the World Hockey Championship for Team USA.
Don't care. How many playoff experience does Tage Thompson have?
I would take that any day of the week.
Yeah, but how much playoff experience does Tage Thompson have?
How much successful playoff experience do we have with the lineup we have now? You have to change. Tage Thompson is big. He's physical, and he can score.
I get that. But
you want to Sam Bennett $10 million to put up 40 points.
Yeah, because he's got playoff experience. Stanley Cup wing. And it could be wings in a couple weeks.
No, it's go to a team like Buffalo and find out what the price is on Tage Thompson, or probably the more realistic option is Alex Tutt. Bring him in, add some depth to your second line.
Yeah.
William Nylander, he's going to play if John can't skate Tavares again, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So you got to bring in a guy that can move.
Why not put Nylander with Matthews since you're losing Marner?
Because you need balance.
No, you don't.
You do
need
to.
Also, just as whatever knows, also has 5 teams you could say no to. So you know what? This I understand what you're saying, Jacob, but at the end of the day, all these players just have to be like Nabi.
Yeah, but I think
it's hard.
I would argue the Buffalo Sabres have to make a huge change because it's 14 years of disaster. The Toronto
I agree with that.
Have had 9 years of disaster. So why don't these two teams? I could see Buffalo saying, "Screw it, we want a young player in Easton Cowan. You want an experienced center in Alex Tutt. Let's make it happen."
You also forget a lot of teams, and I just want to put this out there. I think this is the most ridiculous. This is more ridiculous than Dr. Seuss ran the circus argument I have ever heard in my life. Like, honestly, every GM that says this, that we should ship them this book because this is the most ridiculous argument I've ever heard. I don't want to trade the player in my division because we may have to play them again. So,
yeah, I've heard that too.
No, that's true. Like teams,
I've heard that too.
Teams just straight up refuse to trade somebody because you have to play them 6 times instead of 2. But you'd want to trade Alex Tuck to Vegas so that you could play them in the Stanley Cup Finals instead of the first round.
Well, look at the Langton disaster this year, right? They traded him to Carolina because they didn't want him in his division. Then he ended up like a crybaby, so he ended up in the same division as Colorado, and they kicked Colorado out of the playoffs. So
yeah, and that's also I don't know that I don't remember the trade, but there was a trade a few years ago. I don't know if you guys remember this trade, but a team traded a player to the Los Angeles Kings to avoid playing in the same division. And 10 seconds after they traded him to LA, they traded him to the same team that wanted him for more.
Wow.
I'm not even joking. Like literally happened. Like he literally got traded to LA, and then 10 minutes later got traded to the team that was offering the pack. They just was like, okay, well, since that's what you're offering, we'll give him to you. So he ended up exactly where he should have, and the other team could have got the package and said they gave to LA for nothing.
Holy God, I didn't know that. That sounds funny.
What you're saying though is you don't think Buffalo will be willing to trade of Toronto because they're in the same division.
100%.
And even if you get a guy like Easton Cowan, so I think
100%.
Toronto would be willing to move him.
Oh, 100%.
And a big rivalry too.
Again, Jacob, I'm not saying I like it. I think it's a ridiculous argument.
I see your point.
It's just this is what teams do. It's a long-standing NHL today. It's like the same thing with Calgary and Toronto. They hate Brad Treliving, so they'll refuse to trade. But what if the Leafs offered Easton Cowan for a 7th-round draft pick? They would say no. Like by their logic right now, they would say no. We don't like Brad Treliving, so we're saying no. Yeah. Like I don't know what it is with these little like loopholes that teams have. Like we won't trade to you, or I don't because we had a bad falling and I won't trade you. I don't agree with this at all. At the end of the day, it's business and business. Mm-hmm. Whatever makes your team better, I think that's the direction you gotta go. You gotta forget about all these like crybaby GMs that are like, well, I don't want to trade him because he used to be a GM of our team. Like this is so ridiculous. Do what makes your team better. And you know what? I like what Florida does. Like At the end of the day, you want to be the team to beat. Who cares what the other teams do? If you can make your team better, make your team better.
Yeah,
I could be wrong. I just don't see it. It makes no sense to me.
And you
You
look
bring a
at
good
the Boston and Toronto. Very few cases where Boston and Toronto are in the same division, and they have made trades in the past. And you look at that Tuukka last trade, that was one of the biggest disasters ever. So now we got to look at Brandon Carlo, and you traded Brandon Carlo for Fraser Mitten. Is that going to be a Tuukka last disaster all over again?
Could be.
Time will tell, right?
Could
But
be.
that's the
Cowan
risk
could be the
when you
same
trade
thing.
in divisions.
Easton Cowan could be the same thing, but the Leafs aren't trying to win 3 years from now. They're trying to win now.
Yeah,
Unless,
but 3 years from now, Fraser Mitten could be kicking for Leafs' butt, you know?
yeah, but I don't know. It'll be interesting. I just think Buffalo, when we look at teams that could be making a big splash in the trade market, I think the Buffalo Sabres are that team. You have guys. you
Yeah,
have a guy
for
like
sure. I
Kevin
can see
Burke.
that.
You got a year left in his deal. You got a couple RFAs that aren't happy there, so trade them so you can get something for them.
Look at JJ Patuka in Buffalo. Look at Lassam Sundin. How fed up is he going to be being one of the best defensemen in the league in Buffalo?
Yeah, I could see Darlene getting fed up and saying I demand a trade.
Yeah, 100%. Right, I can see it.
But I think it's time we wrap up for the day. And Dan has a very confusing mindset to me, so I just put 50,000 question marks in the script. But
Yeah.
Dan, what is your Island mindset for tonight?
Let me explain. I actually changed it in the middle of the episode. So I was going to talk about something else, but Jacob brought up a very good point in the rant in Edmonton. I thought, oh, I'm going to use this for my mindset today because it's a very good point. So Stuart Skinner, as we know, maybe he played an okay game according to Jacob. According to Wesley Ward, he played a terrible game. Either way, he got the team to the point they're at now. And yes, game 3 did not go the way Edmonton wanted or the fans wanted. However, Stuart Skinner is a nice human being. And even if he wasn't a nice human being, he's still a human being. And at the end of the day, this is a sport called hockey. And it's sport and it's entertainment. That's it. We'll go out and talk about it for hours and we'll make a living out of it. And that's fantastic. But at the end of the day, it's a sport and entertainment. And entertainment sports are not more important than life. And a lot of Edmonton fans are giving Stuart Skinner death threats. And I'm not saying all of them are, but some of them are. And that's just insane. He's a human being trying to make a living, and he didn't do anything terrible. It's not like he did what Chris Plonker's wife did, just demand to not live in the city of Edmonton, right? Nothing like that. He just played a mediocre game, and you didn't take life and death into hockey. Like, it's kind of Jacob will remember the player, but it's like the Saskatchewan field goal kicker that missed the field goal in the Great. Who?
Brett Lothar.
Brett Lothar, thank you. Missed the field goal in the Grey Cup, and Saskatchewan fans were aching his house and death threats him. I'm like, dude, people, slow down. I mean, I get it's frustrating, but it's not like Stuart Skinner was in the net and just decided to skate off to the bench because he doesn't like Edmonton for the score on him. It was nothing crazy like that. Like, he put in an effort, so don't give him death threats, please.
You know, I think that can just bring you a great point is just love your neighbor and treat people as you want to be treated, right? Yeah, and at the end of the day, it is only a sport. It's only a game. It's not like Stuart Skinner went out and murdered your wife. Yeah. So, like, maybe don't send him death threats. That'd be cool. Don't send us death threats either. We're not sponsored by death threats. And I don't think we could be. But no, I think it's time we wrap up the Streakers Island podcast. Looking for more Streakers Island content? Make sure you follow us on all the social medias, every single one. And if you're looking to play along with us and challenge us to different rivalries and challenges, what you need to do is go on the Streakers app and find us. There is all kinds of new things coming to the app. Chazzy literally doesn't sleep, and he gets these amazing updates done just for you. So I am Jacob Moore, the self-proclaimed sports analyst. Of course, we have Mr. Chazzy 5.97, who puts the capital E in CEO. We have Mr. More for your money. Woo! And, of course, Lane dashing, Dashco. Until next episode, we'll be back Saturday to break down and preview 2 big games in the Canadian Football League. But until then, we'll see you later.
Bye-bye.